Hello, I'm Justin. This is Kellan. Welcome to The Fizz. Maybe a lighter news week, but still interesting things going on for us to chat about here in The Drip. I'm going to continue the thread on Anthropic. There was an update, a blog they put out since our last episode, where we talked about Claude design and how more tools are seemingly coming into the software from the frontier labs more natively. And Claude design is an example of that. Or artifacts and cowork is an example of that. So less using Claude to connect with other tools and more tools available inside of Claude. I think we agree that's maybe a trend we'll continue to see. But they also just dropped a whole bunch of plugins, again, native plugins, their connectors they're officially supporting for creative work. And so when I think about the arc the technology's been on, MCP servers became a big deal ago, let's just say roughly about a year ago, maybe not even that long. And a lot of them were open source. So somebody who cared took their time to say, hey, I developed a MCP server that works for Photoshop. And then people would fork that or use it or whatever. And now you're seeing, I think, more available from the frontier lab itself, in this case, Anthropic, which I think really comes down to trust for the user. Okay, Claude has this thing available. I trust it. I'm going to use this over something that was open source. But what's interesting about this creative drop is it covers everything from like music production and DJing with software like Ableton to Canva to Photoshop. And there's a bunch of others listed in the article. And honestly, I don't think there's any reason to expect that advancement of the product space for both Anthropic and OpenAI doesn't just continue rapidly. Like it just seems like this is going to happen.
ChatGPT had released this as well. I don't know where it is now, but like, I don't know what it was, like 6 months ago, where they had the connectors.
Right.
So they're both, I think, kind of eyeing the bring your data in securely kind of angle.
Other big news I thought from this week was Microsoft and OpenAI announcing pretty significant changes to their partnership. So just like a quick recap of the history. Originally, Microsoft had certain exclusive licenses to OpenAI in exchange for being the exclusive cloud provider for OpenAI. And Microsoft made this deal very early on. Like, if you remember the context, like this was all materializing at the same time. Like Altman was like ousted and then like reinstated as CEO. And I think Microsoft at the time, I'm speculating, I don't have any inside knowledge, like really sought to be a fast mover into being in that partnership. Because at the time, OpenAI was clearly ahead of everyone else. And there was this weird like AGI clause, like if OpenAI achieved AGI, then Microsoft no longer had its exclusivity. And there was this big legal debate about what does that even mean, AGI? And you got people saying like, we've already achieved AGI. And so what are we doing? So I think both sides are essentially saying like, hey, we're still important partners, but we're open to seeing other people. So now, OpenAI has the freedom to partner with other cloud providers. So they announced a deal with AWS recently for compute partnership. You'll probably see more timely access to OpenAI models on other cloud platforms that aren't Microsoft. And then obviously Microsoft, they have incentive to be more open. And they're already doing this. You can use either OpenAI models or Anthropic models, and Microsoft has some of their own models. And so I think Microsoft's best path forward is to be a really capable integrator with this technology for the things we already love and use from Microsoft, the Office suite, data platforms, Azure, various things like that. So people have been kind of in the rumor mill on things like Reddit, like wondering when this partnership was going to like fracture because of how it was written in the first place. And this sounds like a pretty healthy update to what they're doing.
Yeah.
But if you're a Microsoft shop, I wouldn't expect any changes to your ability to leverage OpenAI models through Azure or anything like that. More options for more people. All right, inside the bottle, we've been working on a system that we call AI Pathfinder. We mentioned it briefly last week. We talked about a process we went through really just to get clarity on what needed to be done to bring it to a V1 state. And that conversation was really interesting. Today, I'd like to provide an introduction to the method that is behind Pathfinder because it's a method that if you're watching this, you could go try and use and think about right now. There's nothing secret about the method itself. We're working on ways to use this method in different engagements with different types of companies, but I thought it'd be fun and interesting to walk anybody that's watching through the method itself. All right. So the Pathfinder method is born out of a couple things. First, I would say the two of us, our collective experience in consulting in general. What simple techniques or ways of thinking about problems have we found to be effective? And then second is, what have we been repeatedly hearing from essentially every leader or company we've talked to about AI? And that feedback is essentially have it. People say things like, we have Copilot or we have ChatGPT, and people are using it, but we're generally unsure what we could be doing with it beyond what we're already doing. And so the method behind Pathfinder is a 5-step process that's aimed at helping people gain clarity and focus. So when you're in the hustle, so to speak, of your day-to-day job, it's hard to remind yourself of some really simple things about what it is you do and what the opportunities are. And so Pathfinder's first goal is to help you gain clarity around what you do. And then its second goal is to help you find opportunities and to prioritize and to focus on them. So I'll walk us through this today, Kellan.
Sounds great.
5 steps in the Pathfinder method. Step 1, we want to map value. Step 2, we want to find opportunities. Step 3, we want to see the solution. Step 4, we want to design version 1 of that solution. And step 5, we kind of create a plan for a 30-day start. I think I've said this before, but I think AI just emphasizes this truth. We've always said things like, when we're working with technology, let's start with the business or start with the value, et cetera. But AI is so broad and so weird that there's not a clear vision at the beginning, usually, of what I should be doing with it. You talk about something like apps or dashboards. It's easier to envision what I do with it, or or it's easier to envision the thing I would create. I think it's harder with AI for a lot of people. So let's just walk through this, and you can do this yourself. We'll figure out how to get this shared out as quickly as possible so you could walk through it. The first thing to do is to pause and map value. I know that I forget this a lot in any particular role I've had. And I think most people forget this a lot when they're in the pace of the day-to-day. But to stop and just really clarify, what is the main thing my team is supposed to be delivering, and where is our time actually going? So just spell this out very simply. And there's an example here, right? So that we've got a hypothetical of a sales team, right? It's like, well, what are the outcomes that this team actually owns? Renewals and expansions. That's the main thing that they're responsible to deliver. That's the main value they're creating for the organization in this context. But then if we compare that to, well, where's your time actually going? I think you could do this in almost any department, any function, any role, and you'll find things where people are spending their time in ways that are not directly productive to the value that you're supposed to create. And that reveals a really simple gap. And I think if you sat down with either just yourself in a notebook or your team and you had a conversation around this framework, you'll quickly realize the thing you already know is there. I think most leaders, they already know where this gap is. They already know where their time is going. But they've been seeing like demos of AI solutions, wondering, well, how do I use that thing, versus just starting with, well, here's the gap or the problem I've got. And Kellan, I'm just curious, like in your own experience, consulting or training, even before AI, for how simple this is to just write down, it is incomparably difficult to stop and take the time to do it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think from my experience, well, it's almost easier to think about in the context of AI because of how fast it can be. But I think you could also do it in the sense of like dashboards, things like that as well, where, a little bit of discernment and like upfront planning is like kind of required now. Otherwise you will waste so much time. I mean, you want to iterate, you want to do things like that. Like that's that's part of like the value add process, but it's a different kind of dance now. So a process like this is needed.
Yes. And this doesn't need to be hard, right? I don't think it needs to be overthought, but I think if you
Yeah.
take the minimal amount of time to stop and think and get reasonably specific, um, you'll remind yourself of the clarity you already had. It's just been getting buried in the slog of your day to day. So then we can move on. So if we've got a clear view of where our value map, well, then we can start finding opportunities. So the gaps that we identify in the value map, those naturally reveal what the opportunities are. So we like to think of it as, okay, of all the friction points you see, and so in that previous example, they mentioned the time spent on QBR decks, or they mentioned the time responding to tickets and incidents. Like, what are the short list, not 20? Like I've seen teams do this. They get in a whiteboard and they all write up 10 ideas about doing things with AI. Like, what's the short 1 to 3 things that are worth actually doing something about,
Hmm.
right? This is where you can start to exit the trap of just because AI can do it doesn't mean you should. I had a great conversation with someone several months ago, but they made a point of like, we could introduce tons of automation into our customer service function. But even if we improved that function by a rate of 20%, as an example, the ability to realize value, like economic or monetary value from that, was basically zero.
Hmm.
So this is where you can say, okay, what would actually be worth solving? So you might say, yeah, if we got rid of those tickets, they're annoying, but it's not giving us enough time back where we could actually do anything about it. So this is the place where you can start to define, okay, I see an opportunity to automate the QBR prep as this example. And then I want to describe, how does this work get done and where does it break down? Like, what are the problems? It takes too long. What's difficult about it? And why that actually matters, right? If you can't describe why it matters, you might be chasing the red herring, so to speak. So use that value map to reveal what your opportunities are so you can find them and debate, where does it make sense for us to actually focus? I think getting to this point is sort of the minimum, in my opinion, the minimum prerequisite to actually going off and starting to consider building an AI oriented solution.
One thing about this, I think in a effort to simplify value generation,
Hmm.
I think a lot of people say things like this task or project either increases revenue or decreases costs, like as a mechanism to simplify things. That's not always the case. Now,
Right.
sometimes that's an indirect indicator, like, for example, like it reduces your time. So, so that means
Hmm.
theoretically less cost, right? But a lot of the opportunities I think are like grease.
Mm,
They like grease the revenue generation or cost
right.
savings or like simply ensuring that like your team is vibing, that
Agree.
that the leaders know what is dragging the value out of their function.
Hmm.
And so I think it's better just to think more broadly about are the what the specific value is being generated either
Hmm.
through reduced cost, increased revenue, or simply like making it easier for other people to do their jobs and work more cleanly
Hmm.
together.
Yeah.
So it doesn't have to be like that's what a nice thing about this Pathfinder is that it draws from like our experience in operations, finance,
Hmm.
client solutions. So it's not simply like a sales or a marketing
Hmm.
or finance kind of value generation tool. It is simply looking at individuals and teams and trying to guide the application of AI in the right places
Right.
and more importantly, not into the wrong places.
Right. And in the right ways. And so I
Yeah, in the
think
right ways. Yeah.
this prerequisite, which I think everybody can do the first 2 steps. Like if you just slow down, they're super simple, but we're going to be having all kinds of stuff come out around this method. Just like Kellen, you just said it so perfectly. Everybody knows intuitively, if they've been doing something for any period of time, what value am I supposed to try and deliver? And that value isn't always monetary. It's
Right.
things like I complete the quotes on time, or I make sure that this schedules are ready. Like it's, tangible operational things like that. And in an operational excellence terminology, like we're revealing where the waste is,
Yeah.
you know? And so now that we have this clarity, then we can start to, we don't want to overdiagnose the problem, but we can start to match the problem with the right thing to do about it.
Hmm.
Because AI provides so many opportunities where in some cases a, a dashboard is still maybe the thing you need, right? Just to pull back in our
Hmm.
BI experience, maybe not even any AI, which is a perfect setup for the step 3, which is let's start to actually see the solutions. We've just been talking about this. Not every problem is an AI problem. Yeah. Yeah. And that's why I think distilling this down to like a simple framework that
Hmm.
pretty much anyone could follow is like seeing the solution. We process that through three three simple, easy questions. So now that we found some opportunities. Okay, what problems are actually in play, or where is the hard part in this problem? We generally think in three types of solutions. So the system might be the problem. Data is in the wrong spot. You've got stuff that doesn't talk to each other, but you just need better tools. I think that's
Hmm.
a large percentage of the solutions. It's not like, oh, we just slap some AI on it that goes away. It's like, oh no, let's use our ability to create things with AI to fix that problem, to build a custom app, to build a custom workflow, to integrate data movement from system A to system B. So we've got better tools and we kind of get rid of the system problem.
Hmm.
Or we think about the thinking. So this is an example. Let's say there's certain steps in a process that always require like Kellan to weigh in. Well, you're one person, you might have a lot going on, like things might stall and wait for you. So
Hmm.
this is maybe okay, better intelligence might actually be the solution. Like AI could play a role here where we could extract the wisdom from Kellan's experience, create a knowledge base, create a resource, an AI driven resource where people maybe not everything needs to go to your specific review, or you have less back and forth with you as the reviewer. So again, we're separating, okay, what's the hard part? What's the real problem here? And then the third category is just sort of what we call the toil, repetitive work, things that are always being looked after, double checked. This is where maybe some agentic AI or some autopilot would really be beneficial. And so the step here is to really challenge yourself. Okay, what really makes sense? Because I think a lot of the hype, a lot of the noise in our feeds is, I know this happens to me, so I assume it happens to other people. Like subconsciously, I see AI as the solution to everything. And that's not
Hmm.
right. It's
Yeah.
just not. It's just not. So think about that. What's the problems? The second question we think about is, well, what would you do if you had unlimited capacity on your team? And in a really specific answer, not just, oh, we'd be faster or we'd be higher quality. Like specify, like if I had just an unlimited supply of people, what would they do? And spell it out like that we have in this example. Because then you can start to visualize more concretely what is the thing I might go build? What is it going to do? So if you had an example, I'd have 50 people. All they do is make sure that the data from this system makes it over here without any errors. Or I'd
Hmm.
have people like facilitating the communication between Kellen and Justin, or whatever it is. Then you can start to realize the type of capability you need to introduce. And then a really important question, the third one is, well, what happens if it's wrong? Because you want to start to differentiate between low stakes and high stakes problems so that you build not only the right thing, but with the right guardrails and rules so that you protect risk in your organization. So even though AI might be in play for something like better intelligence, you need to understand where the limitations are, how often a human in the loop is or isn't required.
Hmm.
We think these are three really simple questions that you and your team can walk through and discuss. Again, this is going to start to give you clarity about what does the solution actually look like. And then here's an example here of this one we've been working through. So every solution we identify in Pathfinder is going to have a mix of one to three of those situations we outline in question one: better tools, better thinking, or better autopilot.
So in my experience, it's like your first step should just be you and a notepad.
Yeah.
What's on your mind?
Yeah, answering things. Yeah.
That's it. Yeah, and maybe there's a few questions. So, like in the C solution one, there's 3 questions.
Yep.
That's all we're going to work on. We're not going to work on, you know, trying to build anything. We're not trying to like get a check mark on a task. We're not doing
Right.
any of that. Like that's not the goal. And so by separating this step into just, you know, simple, almost form driven kind of like questions that just inspire you to think
Right.
instead of solve,
Right.
I think is a very like we built it into a system which we
Hmm.
think will help people, but I'm saying like it's a system that we built that we use like because it works.
Right.
Like think, evaluate, kind of brainstorm, let it all go, you know,
Yep.
and then kind of evaluate after.
Yeah.
I think is a helpful exercise, not just within Pathfinder for AI,
Right.
but I think even just within your job itself. It applies, I think, almost personally, professionally, everything.
Yeah. Couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more. Just simple questions, simple thinking, not sitting there riffing with ChatGPT or Claude, just like
No.
get your own thoughts out. Everything we've done that we've been really proud of so far has been preceded with this activity, right?
Yeah.
So map value, find opportunities, see the solution. Now we can start designing V1, and that's what step 4 is all about. And the way we like to think about this is really tighten up your scope, get really tangible. Think about one person or one workflow or the smallest version of what that solution might actually look like. And so the framework we use for that is like, what's the real first user of the new thing you need? Again, you've started to get clear. It's like, oh, I need better tools or I need better autopilot. Well, who's going to use that? And can you describe what it's like today and what it's going to be like after and what the smallest useful V1 thing is? This is what Kellan and I talked about last week, where we worked through everything about this, everything about Pathfinder to get clear on what needs to be
Mhm.
V1 and what needs to be a V2 or what do we not need at all. And so now we can start to describe this very clearly. We're starting to have a very simple yet very clear definition of the problem as well as definition of the thing we want to potentially build. And so I wouldn't even here. I've gone here myself in the past. I've gone straight to like, oh, let's build a solution that is better for my productivity or is better for uh, this problem that I have. But I've not achieved enough focus on clarity of what I'm actually trying to do. And I end up building something like where I'll say, oh my gosh, I built this app so fast, or I built this thing so fast. But I'll use it for a little while and I realize like this isn't actually solving my problem at all.
Mhm.
But the key here, I think, where teams get stuck is after they do have some clarity or some conviction about a problem, AI makes it really, really easy to scope creep, or I think you coined the term AI creep last week. Same thing with a notepad or your notes app on your computer, not riffing back with an AI that's going to hype you up and build your idea into a monolith. What's the
Mhm.
smallest real version of a thing that one person could start using that would make a difference? Because this is going to be your most effective building block. And I'm curious, you've famously one shot several things, and then I've heard you say, well, you go back to step 0. Like, what's been your journey with how to think about building things with AI and compartmentalizing the first version of something versus where you ultimately end up?
I mean, I have so many examples of like one shots that like I thought I knew what I needed,
Hmm.
like what I thought the value the thing was supposed to provide, and if I had that, I would be happy,
Hmm.
kind of a thing, to over to be hyperbolic again. But I didn't wasn't preceded by any type of like thoughtful kind of evaluation of
Hmm.
where the true like if I saw it today, where would the true value be? So, and also I think there's a separate conversation to this, which is building an AI can kind of be fun
Hmm.
or addicting, which is like wasn't able to build an app before, let's say,
Hmm.
and now I can build whatever app I want. What do
Right.
you mean? And so like there is like once again like the hammer in search of a nail kind of
Hmm.
thing here where it's like I can build an iOS app or whatever I want.
Right.
Like, that's crazy. And so, like, for example, I built an iOS app, this is months ago, to help, like, manage our household. It's
Mhm.
called the Household app, right? Opens on my wife and my phone,
Mhm.
and we can put grocery lists in there and see if any if you go to the grocery list, go to the grocery store, it has a grocery
Mhm.
checklist, all that stuff. But it also has a ton of other stuff. It has a task list, it has
Mhm.
shared calendars, it has travel planning, all the stuff. What's funny is the only thing that is really used on this thing is the grocery one. That was where the value was.
Yeah.
The calendar was not added because there's a calendar app. Like,
Right.
you just see it on the calendar. It's fine. You don't
Right.
need it in the app. The travel one, it's done via text. It's done, that's not something that's like planned like
Yeah.
that. That's
Yeah.
just not our styles. We're going to open up a document or something like that and share a Google Doc or something like that. If at all, like these
Right.
days, because it's kind of
Yeah.
hard. We're going to go these days. We'll figure out the itinerary as we go.
Yeah.
We just need to make sure we got flights, place
Yep.
to stay.
That's it.
And so practicality was not really evaluated in the generation of that app. It was just
Right.
like, I want to build an app. And so
My household
the
needs an app is not a
yeah,
good
my
problem
household
definition.
not a problem that really needed solving. However, the grocery one genuinely genuinely used and is helpful. But everything else, and that took a lot of time, is a lot of the other features that like didn't really add any value. So and I got other examples like this too. So it's like,
Mhm.
this is born out of experience where like
Mhm.
a V1 is critical to evaluate value
Mhm. Agree.
because like if you are trying to build V4, this will happen. You will
Mhm.
have built a bunch of features you don't need,
100%.
guaranteed. Like I'm not like, I don't try to make like, you know, binary kind of decisions. Like,
Mhm.
it's true.
Yeah.
You will. And it's frustrating because you're like, well, I know what my needs well. It's like, you
Mhm.
do, but you're now going to have access to the world's greatest technology ever built. Um, like, you are going to be working in a different ecosystem where like that value was a precursor to other
Mhm.
things. Like, it's hard to explain, but like you thought the value was here,
Mhm.
but it was over here.
Right.
Like, I wouldn't have thought like the grocery list was the main thing
Right.
because it's the least impressive thing of all of the other things,
Right.
honestly. Like the ability for the phone to stay on
Right.
so that it could, like, you could check things off as you go through the store and it has a store layout, like that kind of thing. I
Mhm.
would have never thought that that was like the only thing kind of keeping this thing alive in a sense.
Mhm.
And so I could have built that way faster and then said, hey, and like what other things could we help to add,
Mhm.
to maybe streamline things in our household? And
Mhm.
what her answer probably would have been is nothing. That's good.
Yeah.
Why do
That's
we,
great.
why do we need any more? Like, just
Yeah.
let's go. And then we'll, maybe in a few months we'll come back and say, it'd be really cool if we added a travel itinerary part
Mhm.
to this. And I think the big part to that is like, you are starting to build consensus with your user base. So, I mean, that's my
Mhm.
household,
Right. Right.
but like, if nobody's using it, it's like a
Mhm.
process that you're running. Assuming a process with like multiple people, right? If it's just
Mhm.
your process, it's a little simpler. But like if it's a process across like team members and stuff, you need consensus. And so
Mhm.
like if you're building something, everyone needs to be kind of like excited and on the same page about what's being built. And I
Yeah.
think there's going to be a ton of ideas, but like, what are the ideas that create a genuine V1?
Mhm.
And then everyone can get excited about contributing to the next version once we're ready. So it's got to be anchored in a process,
Mhm.
focus on like the critical one or two or three things that's going to provide value that just is painful today.
Yeah.
And then, and then, use it for a little bit
Mhm.
and see what works, see what doesn't. And there'll be nobody's going to get hurt if you're like, shut it down,
Right.
right? Shut it
Yeah.
down. We didn't spend that much time on it. Like, it's shut it down. It didn't work. Let's start over. We didn't burn months of our time.
Right.
So,
Yeah. If you just sit there going, let's build a cool AI app for our sales team,
mhm.
it becomes
Oh
easy
God.
and kind of a fun, it's like a distraction that you don't need. Like,
Yep.
oh, they could have this feature and this feature, and I bet they'd love this. I bet they'd love that. I bet they love this. And then you go actually talk to people and they're like, yeah, but that's not where my value is leaking. That's not where I'm losing my time. That's not so and some V1s, like if you do follow this system and you kind of go through the steps, you gain clarity, you gain focus, you design a V1,
Hmm.
not everything's going to be as this isn't a guarantee of like always going to win, but you're going to find out faster. Like this leans
Yep.
into the classic advice of figure out how to fail fast, whether if it's the wrong diagnosis, the wrong application choice, maybe a hurdle of like actually delivering, but it's going to avoid you just sitting there building and building and building and building, which AI can trap you into doing
Hmm.
before you go
Yep.
make contact with folks. So design V1, get as specific and small as you can without, you know, reducing the value generation out of the equation. And then my favorite step is step 5, which is clarify a 30-day start. I can speak for myself. I can speak for the experience I've had working with clients over the past almost a decade on technical projects. Most good ideas die because they don't have a path forward of execution. And so I thought it was really critical in this sort of method that it ends with a commitment to get started. Otherwise, you could leave a workshop, be like, oh, we've got a great idea for building a thing that could help us. But if you don't get honest with yourself about what needs to happen next, who's going to do it, by when, this is the thing that stalls teams on all kinds of projects is not having
Hmm.
clarity on this. So just answer very simply for yourself. What are you going to commit to? And what is the first concrete step that needs to happen? Get yourself going, get off the starting line. It's a clear principle in GTD and getting things done that I've used for years at this point is what is the first thing I need to do? Just define that. Because if you can do the first thing, you can do the second thing, so on and so forth. Who's involved and when are you going to do it by? And then commit to yourself to go off and do that. Because if you just sit there thinking about your idea, it's not going to get built. You need to have a go conversation with Larry in IT about access to something. You need to talk to Julie in accounting to clarify something. Like define what is the first concrete step that gets you moving. It's probably not open Claude code and get started.
Right.
It's probably something else. But I can't emphasize this enough just based on my own experience of getting stuck in procrastination or getting kind of paralyzed without really knowing what to do. Clarify your 30-day start with one concrete action, one concrete step you're going to take, and let your idea get going. You're much more likely to see some wins. But yeah, I don't. You and I, we talk about this. I feel like all the time where we realize I've been having this awesome idea, but I haven't clarified like what I need to do, and so I'm just continue to have this idea, but I'm not doing anything about it. So I think everything that preceded this is meaningless if you don't commit to this part of it.
Yeah. I think the only thing I'd add to this, uh, if you don't think you have a stakeholder, you're probably like not thinking about the problem enough because
Right.
even if the stakeholder is yourself, you
Hmm.
need to commit to yourself then. So otherwise there's no form of accountability. It's not
Hmm.
just about like, when do I start? It's about how do I hold myself and my team accountable for something like this.
Right.
Um, it's not like a negative thing. It's about motivation and
Right.
clarity and stuff like that. So one of the first steps is it depends on what kind of company you're at or what
Hmm.
your role is, but I think a big first step for any of these for the Pathfinder is like having a conversation with your boss
Hmm.
or your team or whatever about like what you're thinking. It doesn't have to necessarily like, and by the way, that's a task.
Agreed.
Set up meeting
Yep.
with team to discuss this. So it should be very like actionable as far as what the thing is that you
Yeah.
need to do. And I think you might get some really good feedback from your team or your boss
Hmm.
or whatever about, okay, yeah, let's build this into your performance plan, or
Right.
what if we like tune this up a little bit and we added Bob from accounting and you guys could tag team it or something.
Yeah.
Like, so, I think people think that they can do anything in AI, and that's kind of true, but like what they can't do is provide the context to AI,
Right.
right? Like that's the only thing, like humans' primary value here is they have the knowledge in their head and the ability to collaborate with other
Hmm.
humans that are like solving similar or other problems, and using technology to aid that process.
I agree. And I think here's my pitch to anyone that would want to try and apply this method on your own time themselves. Your chances of success, if you, let's just say the example, you show up in a meeting with your boss to talk, like, to have clarity on what the problem is, clarity on what you think the opportunities are, a vision for a solution, a sketch of what a V1 might look like, and a commitment to action. Like,
Oh my god.
we've managed people for years. Like, what a dream that would be, right? To have
Holy cow.
that type of clarity come into that conversation. And I think you'd be surprised how often you realize something is not as hard as you thought it would be.
Mhm.
It's not as difficult to get the approval, or it's not as difficult to build the thing, especially with the technology we have today. But the thing that is difficult is building up the conviction and the confidence to start, to have the conversation, to take the first step. So trust the work you put in. If you get through the first 4 steps, commit to step 5 and trying to make it real. And so if you go through this, you go through the 5 steps, you're going to have a really grounded deliverable. You're going to understand where you can create some value. You're going to have a direction. You're going to be ready to go on having those conversations. And so, we think a lot of value in these types of systems just comes from having a structured way to think about what you want to be able to do. I think we all have a tendency to get stuck or paralyzed when we don't have a guide about how to have a mental model for the problem.
It's been a lot of work putting this app together, or more than an app, this operating model for AI together. I think it's like there will be even V1, V2 of this.
Yeah.
As we continue to improve features and functions of it to do everything that, we want it to do. But we've run through it many times, and it's pretty damn cool. I think it's going to help a lot of people.
If we do just take a brief minute to toot our own horns, we think it's pretty cool.
That's pretty cool.
But yeah, and we're going to be using the podcast to explore the method on different occasions, dig deeper on certain things. We want to provide all the education and wisdom we can about what we see that's working for ourselves and people we're working with, things that you can do yourself. You can take these tips and get a legal pad like Kellan was suggesting and start working through it. But we are coming out with an application stack and workshop type offering as well. But our main goal is to help people find the places where they can focus their efforts and start winning with AI instead of talking around wondering what to do about it. So if you find this interesting, please hit us up. We'd love to chat with you more. Otherwise, I believe we will see y'all next week with whatever we have to talk about next week.
Peace.